Well, the central task for the police really is to try to work out what motivated Derek Bird to carry out his
girls, this might be it
yesterday.
next.
Let's talk to Dr. Francis.
Here we are, girls,
Pakes,
listen.
a criminal psychologist from the University of Portsmouth, and joins us now from our Southampton studio. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Dr. Pakes. I wonder if you could help us, if it's possible, to get inside the mind of Derek Bird. How is it that somebody like that could carry out some killings which seem to be premeditated, and then others that are just utterly random?
Good evening. You're asking a very difficult question, particularly as Mr. Bird obviously died, and there'll never be an opportunity to actually ask. If you look at such occurrences, and thankfully they're rare, they're particularly rare in this country, maybe one in a decade we have to deal with, there is a certain pattern to it many times, where early killings seems to be involving victims that are close to the actual perpetrator. Later, individuals seem to have little or no relationship with the individual. That seems to be quite a prevalent way. When you talk about the question of why, the Cumbrian police spokesperson, I thought, was wise in saying early on that maybe we will never know exactly why, and that any events that may have premeditated these happenings may not constitute much of an answer to the relatives of victims.
And when somebody like Derek Bird carries out a mass killing like this, is this a sort of a form of protest against the world, which he believes has turned against him as the cause of all his problems? I mean, does he see the people that he is killing at random as somehow responsible for his problems?
Well, Professor David Cantor, one of this country's most foremost criminal psychologists, tends to say that it's a mixture of anger, despair, and a deep desire for revenge. And you can imagine that on top of that, once the spree has started, that maybe a morbid desire for notoriety gets added to the mix. That seems to be very common ingredients in terms of motivations that these people seem to have. In terms of precise motivations, as I said before, it will be very difficult to establish exactly what prompted the start of the whole series of events and what made them sustain it for several hours.
I mean, he certainly seems to have disguised what was going through his head, because most of the people who knew him, friends and neighbours and colleagues, all said he was a pretty normal guy. He was quite quiet, but he liked to drink at his pub and so on. I mean, do you think this would have been building up inside him for a long period of time, and then he suddenly just snapped? Or was it all really just at the very last moment that he somehow flipped inside his head?
When you look at past cases, we do see cases where seemingly events occurred and kicked off spontaneously. In many others, there is a degree of planning that may not have been meticulous, but planning over maybe a few days that clearly has occurred and has focused the mind of the individual. So a degree of planning may well have occurred. The type of guy, I mean, we keep hearing today and yesterday that he was quite regular, quite friendly, quite normal, that no one ever thought that he'd be capable of anything like this. That's also not uncommon if you look at these cases, which is, in a way, a very unnerving thing, that we simply cannot pick out the individuals who at some point in their lives might come to such disastrous events.
Okay, Dr. Francis Pakes, criminal psychologist there. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts and analysis. Well, now let's talk about the casualties who are still